There are places that hold more than just memories. They hold pacts. In the forgotten Abbey of San Viral, between moss-covered columns and stained glass shattered by the passage of centuries, lies a white marble tomb. But it's not the marble that captures the eye, 'tis the rose. Red, untouched, ever blooming. They say it blooms because of a monk. A man who heard voices beneath the earth, who defied the sacred, unleashed the profane, and fell in love with a creature condemned by faith. This is a story of belief and doubt, of light and darkness, death and rebirth. A story of eternal love, not the sweet kind from fairy tales, but the kind born in the abyss between the divine and the damned. Tonight, you will meet Elias and the vampire named Seraphina. Get ready, because what lies beneath the marble isn't just a body. It's a secret, and it's about to awaken. In the dense forest of Tormelhia, where time seemed suspended and the wind whispered in ancient tongues, stood the Abbey of San Viral. Its bells hadn't rung in decades. The monks who still lived there carried, in their eyes, the weight of secrets too heavy for scripture. Among them was Elias, the youngest of the order. His eyes shimmered with faith, but behind them lingered the quiet unrest of someone who questioned in silence. Slender, hooded, with a voice barely above a whisper, Elias rarely spoke. But he watched. He listened. He wondered. Unlike the others, who were content with chants and sacred routines, Elias wandered the abbey halls at night, searching for something even he couldn't name. And then came the storm. Lightning split the sky like blades, and the wind made the chapel's stained glass groan like haunted souls. That night, while kneeling before the statue of Saint Imelda, Elias felt a call. It wasn't a sound he heard with his ears. It came from deeper. A whisper. It rose from beneath the earth. He followed it, through forbidden halls and crumbling tapestries, past locked doors, driven by something that cared nothing for fear. Behind a disused altar, hidden under layers of dust and time, he found a spiral staircase, descending into the bowels of the abbey. There, in the cold deep where the silence felt alive, stood a heavy iron door bound by ancient chains and Latin carvings. Elias didn't know what he was searching for, but he knew with the certainty of those who hear the invisible that what lay beyond would change everything. Clutching a rusted key he'd found among the abbot's forgotten relics, Elias unlocked the chains. The hinges groaned, as if mourning their own disturbance after centuries of stillness. The air that spilled out was thick with damp earth and forgotten incense. The chamber beyond was round, carved from raw stone, its walls worn by time and scratched with fading inscriptions. In its center stood a white marble tomb, glowing faintly even in the shadows. Extinguished candles surrounded it, along with religious symbols, arranged not as tribute, but as if to contain something, or someone. And then Elias saw it. A single red rose, impossibly fresh, resting atop the marble. No rose should survive here. Not in this cold, this darkness. He stepped forward, reached out. His fingers brushed the petal, and a wave of cold tore down his spine. The flame in his lamp flickered violently. Whispers returned, louder this time. Words in a tongue he didn't know. Or maybe didn't want to understand. The rose was a message, a summons, or perhaps a warning. And that's when Elias, trembling, realized the tomb wasn't sealed. It was merely closed. And the marble, though cold, was pulsing, as if breathing. The following night, Elias returned to the crypt. He couldn't stay away. The image of the rose, the breathing tomb, haunted his thoughts like a prayer unanswered. This time he brought more than a lamp. He carried a silver rosary and a vial of holy water. His steps were no longer hesitant. They were the footsteps of someone crossing a threshold with no return. He approached the tomb once more, laid his hand gently on the marble surface. The cold was deeper now, not of temperature, but of essence. It came with a low, resonant hum that echoed in his chest like a second heartbeat. Then, without force, the lid began to slide open, as if it had been waiting. Inside, lying in serene stillness, was a woman. Her black hair spilled like ink over ancient linen. Her eyes were closed, guarding unknowable secrets. She wore a deep crimson velvet gown, embroidered with symbols lost to time. She seemed asleep, until she opened her eyes. Two glowing amber orbs stared at Elias. No escrime, no attack, only a voice, soft, melodic, older than the stones beneath them. "You heard me." Elias stepped back, torn between terror and awe. What are you? She sat up slowly, as if time itself obeyed her will. My name is Seraphina. I was buried alive by hands that vowed to protect the world from what they could never understand. She told him what she was, a vampire, but not a creature of rage, one of pain, of exile, of quiet damnation, locked away by monks who feared her, bound with faith and iron. And now, before Elias stood not a monster, but something that hadn't seen the sky in centuries. Why did you call to me? He asked, barely a whisper. Because in the silence, you listened. In the fear, you came. Maybe, just maybe, you see what others refused to. And there, in the earth's forgotten depth, something began. Something that would defy time, faith, and the very nature of good and evil. In the days that followed, Elias found no peace. His prayers grew restless, his voice uncertain. He recited scriptures that no longer echoed within him, hollow verses in the shadow of something he couldn't explain. The other monks noticed his unrest, but blamed it on fasting, on devotion, on zeal taken too far. But each night, Elias returned to the crypt. He no longer feared it. He was drawn to her. Seraphina was no longer asleep. She waited, still and silent, like a statue, yet very much awake. And they spoke. 4 hours. She told him stories of forgotten kingdoms, of the night she was turned by someone she once loved, of the centuries she'd spent hunted, until finally captured and sealed away beneath the Abbey, her existence erased with rituals dressed as mercy. She spoke of loneliness, of a thirst she never asked for, and of beauty, yes, even in her cursed eternity, in music, in poetry, in the way moonlight danced on mortal skin. Elias listened. He questioned. He challenged. And in time, he doubted. His nights were filled with Seraphina's truths. His days with the silence of stained glass and empty altars. He began combing through the Abbey's forbidden archives, old scrolls, locked manuscripts, journals from monks long dead. They spoke of the daughter of night, a presence buried beneath the chapel, shrouded in silence and sealed by sacred rite. He discovered that San Viral had been built atop pagan ruins, that Seraphina had not been judged, but executed, her entombment a ritual of purification disguised as compassion. And the more Elias learned, the more the vines of doubt wrapped around his heart. If the church could lie about her, what else had it hidden? And Seraphina, with her ancient sadness and restrained hunger, was she truly a monster, or simply a victim? One night, sitting before her in the quiet cold, Elias asked, "If you were free, would you kill again?" Seraphina took her time. Her gaze dropped. "I don't know," she said quietly. "The thirst, it speaks louder than the soul sometimes. But if I had a choice, Elias, I would choose it." And that was when he knew. His judgment had already been made. His fate was sealed the moment he first touched the rose. The night Elias chose to set her free, he brought no scriptures, no relics, only a prayer and resolve. He no longer needed the lamp. He knew every step of the stairway to the crypt by heart. The fear that once clung to his soul had given way to something else, conviction, almost reverence. Seraphina was waiting for him, seated beside the marble tomb. She didn't ask why he had come. She didn't need to. Her amber eyes, ancient and calm, already knew. From within his robes, Elias pulled a brittle parchment, hidden for generations inside a forbidden gospel. The writing was in archaic Latin, its ink faded but still potent. It was a heretic's prayer, not a spell, but a renunciation. A key to break the sacred seal that bound Seraphina to the marble. He began to read. His voice, low but steady, carried the forbidden words into the cold silence. As he spoke, the chamber darkened, as if the Abbey itself were holding its breath. One by one, the long-dead candles flickered to life. Golden light formed a ring around Seraphina, who closed her eyes and absorbed every syllable like warmth after centuries of winter. And when the final word was spoken, the sound cracked through the stone beneath their feet, like thunder trapped underground. The iron seal shattered into glowing fragments, dissolving in the air like dust catching firelight. The ancient prison was broken. Seraphina rose, inhaling deeply, her first true breath in centuries. She stepped forward, bare feet touching stone as if rediscovering gravity itself. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling, not from fear, but from something far more human. "Because no soul deserves eternal condemnation without hope," Elias said. "Not even one born of darkness." She walked to him. For a moment, there was only silence between them, thick as fate. Then she embraced him. Not with hunger, with gratitude. A bond was forged in that moment, deeper than faith, older than blood. That night, two souls crossed the line between the sacred and the profane, and the Abbey of San Viral would never be the same. The next night was silent, as if the world itself stood still in reverence. Serafina walked through the dark woods surrounding the abbey, free at last, yet restless. Elias followed her, his footsteps light on the damp forest floor. He had made his decision. "I want to go with you," he said, stopping beneath a tangle of twisted branches. "I can't live behind walls that lied to me." Serafina turned. Moonlight shimmered in her eyes, a glow not of hunger, but of sorrow. "Do you understand what that means? It means I'll no longer be what I was. But maybe, only then, I'll find out who I truly am." She stepped closer. Her touch was cold, but gentle. She took his hands in hers, and Elias felt centuries of loneliness pressed into his skin. "There's no going back," she whispered. "I don't want to go back." And with care, with reverence, she embraced him. The bite came swift and burning, a searing pain that lanced through him like holy fire. But Elias didn't scream. He felt his heart beat one last time, hard, frantic, before it went still. The world darkened. And then, something else awoke. When he opened his eyes, the night was impossibly clear. Every leaf, every flicker of wind, every pulse of life in the woods around him, alive in ways he had never known. His senses roared. He could hear the owls breathing, the deer hiding far away, and even her heartbeat, steady, eternal. He had been reborn, not as a monster, but as something beyond, something endless. Now, Serafina said, her voice like the wind between ruins, "You know the hunger, and the freedom." Elias nodded. "And the love." The full moon bathed them in silver. Shadows danced around them like ghosts. And on the first night of his eternity, Elias left behind the ruins of faith, to walk beside the curse he had chosen to love. The days became nights, and the nights eternal. Elias and Serafina left San Viral before anyone noticed the young monk's disappearance. They traveled south, through shadowed forests, forgotten villages, and cities where the living feared their own reflections. Elias now saw the world with new eyes, nocturnal eyes. Every detail, every scent, every heartbeat beneath the earth felt more vivid, and yet more distant from his former humanity. Serafina became his guide, his teacher in a life unbound by time. She taught him the unwritten laws of their kind, how to move among humans, how to feed without destroying what remained of one's soul. "Some choose the blood of the innocent," she told him one night, as they crossed a moonlit ravine. "But there are those who drink only from the lost." Elias chose the second path. He fed with guilt, with restraint. Each act carried sorrow, not for the act itself, but for what it meant. Night by night, he felt the human within him slip further away, not from the thirst, but from the silence growing inside him. Together, they wandered into hidden libraries and collapsed monasteries. Read books that spoke of times before the church, of ancient rites, and beings like them, cursed, revered, or forgotten. They encountered others, solitary, disguised, eternal. Some greeted them with kinship, others with suspicion. In Prague, they faced a hunter named Yurek, once an inquisitor, now a relic of vengeance, wielding faith like fire. Elias defeated him, but did not kill him. Still, something in him cracked. In the fury of the fight, he felt pleasure in the violence, and it terrified him. After the battle, Serafina watched him in silence. "Darkness will always try to find a home," she said. "It's up to us to decide if we offer it shelter." That sentence haunted Elias for decades, like a whisper, like a judgment he couldn't answer. And so they continued. Two ghosts under the moon, walking through centuries, collecting memories, trying to find meaning in the curse they had chosen to carry. As the years passed, Elias began to feel the weight of time differently. It was an age that could no longer touch him. It was the absence of purpose. To live forever was a cruel gift for someone who had once lived by meaning. The prayers had long since stopped. The words he once whispered to heaven now echoed inside him, unanswered. In cities veiled in gaslight and oceans of fog, between crumbling masquerades and alleys reeking of hunger, Elias walked in silence. They reached London at the height of the Victorian era and witnessed horrors far beyond the thirst of any creature of the night. Murderers worshipped by crowds, injustice dressed in silk, opulence towering over starvation. Elias could not understand how mankind, so brief, so fragile, could cultivate such darkness in such little time. One night, atop the roof of a ruined orphanage, Serafina found him weeping, not from pain, but from emptiness. "I miss who I was," he murmured. "Even in the prison of the Abbey, I had purpose." She sat beside him, quiet. "You were shaped to serve the light, Elias," she said. "But now you see that light can also blind." He turned to her. "In the darkness, does it comfort?" She didn't smile. She didn't lie. No, but it reveals. And sometimes, that's all we have. Elias didn't answer. But deep within, he knew she was right. Still, the monk inside him refused to die. That fragment of a man still searching for redemption, even when he no longer knew what it meant. It was in Vienna that the past finally caught up with them. By then, they lived beneath an old opera house, among corridors of silence and forgotten music, hiding in a city perfumed by coal smoke and decadence. But word had spread. Whispers of the Golden Blade Brotherhood. A secret cult descended from inquisitors, wielding faith like a weapon and forging their blades with blessed silver and ancient rites. One rain-drenched night, returning from a quiet hunt, they were ambushed. 3 men and 1 woman, faces masked in white, weapons gleaming. The first strike came fast. A silver stake plunged into Serafina's shoulder, laced with sacred salt. She fell, writhing but silent. Elias reacted like a storm. He moved with impossible speed, disabling 2 of the attackers. But the third held a burning crucifix, searing the air, halting Elias mid-charge. The woman advanced towards Serafina, blade raised for the final blow. And then Elias made his choice. With a cry that echoed through the stone halls, he drew the hunters to him, not to fight, but to lead them upward toward the surface. The first hints of dawn cracked the sky. He was wounded, cornered, but resolute. Holding the last of the hunters by the collar, he looked to the east. The man pleaded, but Elias said nothing to him. He only whispered, "She will live, and you will remember." The sunlight broke, and when it touched him, Elias didn't scream. He only closed his eyes and smiled, as if at last he had found peace. Serafina arrived too late. All she found was ash, scattered across the cobblestones, and among them a silver rosary, untouched, clean, timeless. And in that moment she understood. Elias had not chosen darkness. He had chosen the light and offered himself as its last, most honest sacrifice. Decades passed since that tragic morning in Vienna. The city's shadows changed. The faces grew old, but the echo of that sacrifice remained, invisible, yet eternal. Serafina wandered alone, not as before, no longer driven by thirst or flight, but by memory. She avoided Europe, where every alley still whispered his name. She traveled east, through deserts and temples forgotten by time. Among monks of silence, she found a kind of peace. But no prayer could erase the void he left behind. Wherever she went, she left something behind. A flower, a verse, a symbol. In broken churches, in empty crypts, in hidden gardens lost to the world, as if trying to carve into the earth what Elias had meant. And eventually, she returned to where it all began. The Abbey of San Viral was cloaked in moss, swallowed by centuries. Its windows shattered, its altars blanketed in dust. Alone, Serafina descended the familiar staircase, each step whispering his name. The marble tomb still stood. There was no body, only the rosary, resting gently atop it, untouched, preserved by something beyond time. And upon the rosary, a rose, Red, alive, she knelt before it, and for the first time in centuries, she prayed, not for forgiveness, but for gratitude. You saw in me what even I could not see, she whispered, and for that, you will live as long as I do. And from that day forward, it said, those who find the ruins of San Viral and the single red rose blooming on sacred marble feel a presence beside them, calm, protective, as if a monk still watched over the world's darkness. In silence, in love, and the rose, they say, never fades. Some secrets were never meant to stay buried. Others bloom because someone dared to uncover them. Elias found in the dark a light too many feared to touch. And Seraphina, in the eternity of night, discovered that love might be the only true redemption, even for the damned. The rose still blooms. And if you ever find it, remember, there are pacts that outlive time and loves that refuse to die.